Good morning, Frank.
Hello, Elmer. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Well, I've thought about that, and I woke up this morning and I decided that I'm grateful today. And I'm grateful for a couple of reasons. One is I'm grateful for you doing this because if we can help somebody else with an idea or a perspective, we've learned over the years that if we help somebody else, it also helps ourselves. So I really appreciate that you're doing this. Secondly, I'm grateful because you asked me to do this, and that gave me a good reason to stop, the normal lunacy of the day with all sorts of things happening, and stop and reflect and step back and say, let me look at the big picture. Let me try and put it in perspective. Let me try and collect and organize my thoughts. And I think that's going to be very helpful for me. So, thank you for both of those reasons.
Oh,
But
we're
before,
grateful for you making the time.
okay, but before we get started, I got a question for you because I know you have plenty of questions for me. Here we are on Wednesday morning, April 1st, and it's April Fool's Day. Is that a coincidence that you're interviewing me, or was it a selection on your part?
I can neither confirm nor deny that information.
Okay. Oh, you're a regular politician. Good.
So Frank, I like the moment of reflection that you have brought up. What do you think? What do you think of all this? How are we going to see our way through this?
Oh, well, I think I've been through some pretty difficult times, just like most other people have. And the challenge is, in my mind, how we approach it. And, we're sitting here today with a challenge that is a physical challenge, a economic challenge, and an emotional challenge. And unless we at least fix the emotional side, we're not going to fix these other sides, okay? And so I think we have to start there. And what we need to do, and I found over the years, I had, years ago, I had a factory burned to the ground. And, my team came together and they did amazing things. But, a big part of that was first believing in ourselves. It may not be perfect when we get to the end, but, we can make it better and we can get through this. And maybe it won't be ideal, when we get to the other side, but it'll be there. Another thing that we need to really think about is there is no detailed roadmap on how we get through this, okay? What we can do is we can create a compass that sets a direction and we keep adjusting as we go, but there's no detailed roadmap on how we're going to get through this. In fact, a week or two ago, I was interviewed on this and they asked me, what's your strategy? I said, well, it's pretty simple. I take the riverboat captain strategy. And the riverboat captain strategy is you look down the river as far as you can and you set your course and you navigate accordingly. And then when you get to the next bend in the river, you do that. Well, normally we can look a long way down the river before we have to change course. In this situation, we got bends in the river all over the place. So we need to have people who are flexible and keep adjusting and that sort of thing. And if they do that and know and recognize that we're going to make mistakes, but we're better off making some decisions, acting on them quickly. Focus on good rather than perfect, and do good quickly and keep moving ourselves forward. And feel good about what we've accomplished and what we're doing.
So let's help set some context for that. Strattec is in the automotive supply chain, and you're a manufacturer. Every piece of the news talks about the role of manufacturing on the economy, and now we're starting to talk about retooling manufacturers to support this global effort. What's happening at Strattec? Are you operating with a skeletal crew? Have you shut down the operation?
Well, what's happened is we've been doing things for now about 2 months, okay? Because as you remember, when this started in China at the end of January, early February, our big challenge as a manufacturer, and especially in automotive, you've got global supply chains. So we spent a lot of time and effort trying to see how we could keep our supply chains open and keep the manufacturers going here. And we were able to accomplish that. I'm very proud of our team in China, and I'm very proud of our team here in the US to be able to do that. But what happened, at that point is in China, we literally shut down our plants. So the beginning of February, we had 0 employees in our factory. 6 weeks later, we're now up to mid-March, about 87% of our employees are back at work. Okay, so we did a major effort in trying to move forward and trying to get back on track. Well, what we did is we learned from that when it started addressing us here in the US. And again, one of the things I've learned with some of the challenges is I can't, and our management team can't direct everything and tell everybody exactly what to do. We'd be fools to do that. We've got a lot of talented people in our company, and what we need to do is we need to spread the responsibility, give them authority, let them know that that they can make mistakes, and we'll readjust and redirect, but take some responsibility, and we're all in it together. So what we've been doing is we started out early on talking with a lot of people and collaboratively working very closely with our union leadership for our plant. And what we came up with was that, again, people needed to decide on their own what made sense for them. They had to make sure, I can't keep them from getting the virus. I can reduce their risk by doing a lot of things like keeping all of the doors in the factory and the office open all the time so nobody's grabbing handles, little things like that. But they have to take the responsibility if they're not feeling well not to come in, or they have to take the responsibility if they can work from home, please do. Again, it reduces risk for everybody, including themselves. So what we did with our union leadership is we crafted a plan where we allowed people to take temporary layoffs if they wanted to, without any attendance penalties or anything like that. And over time, we had more and more people, so that by the end of last week, we had about half of our people deciding to take temporary layoffs. But we also kept the other half working because there were people who wanted to work and needed to work. And part of our situation is, we spent a fair amount of time a few weeks ago trying to determine whether we are an essential business or not an essential business. Okay, and there was all sorts of writings on what qualified and what didn't, but we really came to the conclusion and were confirmed that we are an essential business. Not that we make parts for new models coming out 2 or 3 years from now, but in order to keep the transportation industry running, for service and repair parts, we needed to at least be in a position to support our customers in that role. So what we ended up doing was basically shrinking our workforce, or allowed them to shrink themselves. And then as of this week, we were planning on shutting down for a couple of days because our customers had been telling us that in early April, they wanted to ramp up quickly. Well, As of a couple of days ago, that has changed, and that's pushed out at least a couple of weeks. So now we're shut down all week, and we may be shut down next week. But all we can do is adjust to what the needs of our customers are, and take it accordingly, and give responsibility to our employees, because we got to trust in them. We're all in it together, and if we can understand what we need to do and what the objectives are, they can certainly execute on it. And they've got a lot of creativity. I don't need to nudge them to be creative. They can come up with that.
I think your riverboat captain analogy was a very strong one. I wonder, how are you communicating with those employees, those management employees, to help them understand what's coming around the bend and the whitewater that's ahead?
Well, I'll tell you what we've been doing and what we are doing. So what we had been doing was, certainly with the salaried people working from home, I'm literally meeting daily with my core management team. And, we're communicating, letting know what's happening, what's our priorities. We're collectively making decisions, because I got to tell you, when you're under a lot of stress like this, one person making a decision may not be the greatest decision. So having a collective group, bring in different perspectives. So we're meeting daily on that, and then they are communicating with each of their teams. Before we got to this point, obviously that was also happening in our production side too. But what I was doing, I felt my job was to do a lot of walking around and talking to people, giving them perspective, giving them answering questions, that sort of thing. Along with that, I was sending out a weekly email that just updated everybody on everything I knew. And I made it very clear, this is what I thought I knew. Things were changing so rapidly that what I thought was right today, 2 hours from now may be totally wrong, and it'll change, so stay tuned. So that's what we were doing. Now what we're doing is, I'm still having the daily meetings, but I've now ramped up the emails, because more people are at home, and and more things are changing rapidly. So I'm ramping up the emails to 2 or 3 times a week, just to let everybody know what's going on, what our current thinking is, what our expectations are. And in addition to that, what I'm doing in the emails is I'm asking them to submit questions. So if I know the answer or can speculate on the answer, I'll try to weave that into my communication. But they can't expect a complete and concise answer to every question, but I will try and cover it as much as I can. So that's what we're doing on the communication side. And in addition to that, I'm also communicating with our partners in China and Michigan and Germany, and finding out what are the things that they're doing, and trying to coordinate with them.
So with that said, you do have important contact globally and nationally. How do you think we're faring in relation to other countries, where your other factories are, or even the other states? Do you think we are keeping up, or?
Good question, Elmer. I don't know how we're doing compared to other states. I'll leave that to some of the other people. But compared to other countries, I've been given a lot of hope out of China, because literally we were totally shut down at the beginning of February, and by mid-March we were pretty much back in operation. My conversation yesterday on an update from them was, yes, things are moving along. They're not fully up to speed, but not only our facilities there, but just the whole general environment seems to be moving along and ramping up. When I look at India, our facilities in India, that's a whole nother story. The government has literally shut everything down. And so I don't know what's going to be happening there, but at least in China, it gives me hope that there is an end to this, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I talked to my partners in Germany, and they're still producing and moving it along. However, their customers are slowing down demand. So again, there's some hope out there, and we're trading ideas on how to best address this. And I got to say, a lot of it is the emotional. How do we reduce stress and keep focused on putting one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward and feel good about that.
So with this recording, you have a private audience with our GMC membership, your peers. What is the advice? What is the reflection on that emotional care that you think is valuable to share with them now?
Well, couple of things. I guess I'm going to first focus on stress and try to look at this as an opportunity. How can some good come out of this? I guess is the way we've got to really look at it. And so when I look at the situation, I've sat back and I've said, okay, are there things that I can do differently now, personally and for a company, that I've got some time and perspective that I probably didn't have before. Okay, so in my daily meetings with our management team, what we're doing is we're going through and we're coming up with a set of assumptions on how the world is going to change and how our business is going to change and demands and opportunities are going to change over the next 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. And really try and put a framework around that, so we have that framework to think about what are the things that we need to do going forward. And when we are talking about going forward, part of our job, part of my job, is to keep a focus. And again, we're working on this compass, but we got to make quick decisions. It's better to have a quick decision than a perfect decision that takes a long time to do. So quick decisions that we can pivot and readjust. And it's just as important for us to talk about what to be doing as what not to be doing, because we can waste a lot of time and energy and focus on things not to, that we can't do a whole lot about. The other side is how do we keep mentally strong? Okay, and to me, if you can keep mentally strong, something good is going to come out of that. And so how do we reduce stress? And I've been saying, okay, how can I change my habits and use this as an opportunity? I can start cutting out TV. I can work on losing weight. Exercise is no longer optional in my book. It's mandatory. Just things like reducing clutter can reduce your stress. Putting in humor. The reason I asked you about April Fool's Day today was, you got to lighten it up a little bit. Otherwise, everybody just keeps coming down, down, down. And I know it's tough in a situation like this, but a little bit of humor is an incredible antidote for stress. Put on some music, do something. But let's get our minds and our attitudes set, because unless we do that, the rest of it just isn't going to happen.
So what would you like from your GMC peers? What do you think we should be doing?
I think our challenge going forward, there's a couple of challenges, not only individually, but as an organization. And I've got an incredible amount of hope when I look back over the last, because I'm an old guy, okay? I look back over the last 30 years, GMC has done an amazing amount of things that have really transformed the city. I mean, when you look back in the 80s when downtown was desolate, and what it is now, how it's flourished. So So we've done so many things over the years. So I think there's two things. One, the GMC as an organization can certainly bring people together. We need to in this new environment, people having new habits, whether they're good or bad, because we're now out of our normal routines. And once you're out of a normal routine, you start creating new habits on how to live. I'm getting used to not going to restaurants as much, which is not necessarily good for our friends in the restaurant business, but let's face it, that could have longer term implications. So we need to talk through, what is this new world going to look like, and what can we do together to make the most positive impact, either in helping the people who are challenged, or in moving forward on that. So we need to clarify that. And then the GMC is in a very unique position, I think, to ask people specifically to help. Okay, because if I'll give an example of doing this video. Okay, if you had sent out a request to everybody to say, hey, would you volunteer to be on this video? I had plenty of other things on my mind, and I would have never responded to you, okay? If the GMC identifies a project or an effort or an initiative and goes and asks people to help, and this is how we want you to help, and this is why we're asking you, I gotta tell you, I think 99% of the time you're gonna get those people to help. And that's the way to move it forward. So I think it's both the responsibility of the GMC members to help crystallize what are the priorities and what do we have to do differently in this new world. And it's the responsibility of the GMC to tap people on the shoulder and say, we need you to do this, and it's important. And if you help others, you're going to help yourself.
I think that's a great point. And I'm hearing that as you continuing to volunteer to be a resource to the GMC as an organization, but also to your peer GMC members. So I'm looking forward to hearing about them reaching out and asking you for collaboration and for help. So Frank, I think we're about ready to wrap up this conversation, but I'm going to ask you to finish with, a message of hope. What's the thing that you would want to share with all of us, just to create a moment of brightness and a moment of a reflection and positivity?
Okay, well that's fairly easy for me. Okay, I told you earlier that 20 some years ago, I owned a furniture company that my factory burned to the ground, and I told our employees, as it was still burning, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to figure out a way. Okay, and we did, and we got back in business, and so the 22nd anniversary of that fire was a couple weeks ago. 22 years ago, I still got 3 calls on that day telling me how proud they were of what they accomplished. It was going through hell, no question. Everybody took responsibility. Everybody was committed. Everyone was still very proud of what they did. And I think, a year or 2 or 22 years from now, we're going to look back at this and we're going to say, hey, that was a tough time. I'd rather not go through it again, but I'm proud of how we acted and how we reacted and what we did to make it better, not just for ourselves individually, but for all of us together.
I think that is a fantastic note on which to end. Frank, thank you so much for making some time. I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you in person, hopefully soon.
Me too. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for doing this, Elmer.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.